You're listening to the Around the Lens podcast, the home of high-quality, roundtable, visual journalism discussion about the news, topics, and gear related to our career field. Now, here's the host of our show, David J. Murphy.
Hello and welcome to episode 231 of Around the Lens. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me this week, for the first time in a long time in the morning over on the East Coast, is freelance photojournalist based out of New York, Mr. Zach Roberts. Hello, Zach. How are you?
Hello. I'm tired and exhausted, but fine.
Well, glad you can make it here. I know you've been doing some late nights, right? That's been kind of your typical work schedule.
No, the problem is I've been doing early mornings. I had a story that I covered in Albany, like 3 hours away.
Oh, wow.
Yesterday, and it started at like 10 a.m. So I had to leave my house at like 5 to make sure I got there. And so beyond that, and then also, anyway, but we had to take down 2 trees in front of our house, and so basically I've been spending the last 2 days lifting up heavy pieces of wood and things like that.
Oh my goodness! All right.
Manual labor, you're not used to it.
I am not, well, especially the problem is that there's one thing about just, being out of shape in general, which is, something I'm always usually, but also like the past 3 months where it's like, I've covered like 5 things in 3 months. So even like yesterday they went on like a big circle around a march, and I just watched them go. I was just like, I'm like, okay, well, they'll be coming back around the block in a minute. I don't need to go follow them on this march. I'm way too tired.
So true.
Just wait for them to come on back.
Yep.
All right. Also joining us from New York is chairman of the APA and freelance photographer, lifestyle, fashion, commercial, all that fun stuff, Mr. Travis Keys.
Yeah, he shoots a lot of stuff, whatever. No.
Well, you do it all, man. Shooting proposing one day.
Well, what can I say? I love photography. And it's so true. Zach, you're talking about not working like as much in the last 3 months. It is a real thing. All the photographers I've been talking to recently literally are like, I do one thing and I'm exhausted. I want to take a nap. It's like, I think our bodies are so used to not like being running every day that when we're doing something now, it's a shock to the system.
Like it's tiring enough that I'm like, I have my Z6 has my 24-70 on it, and my D750 has the telephoto, and I'm like, do I really need to lift up the telephoto? It's so much heavier.
I can do this with a camera phone.
I'm like, I can crop in with this. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, also joining us from Washington, D.C. in her living room of her new home is Miss Evelyn Hochstein. Hello, Evelyn.
Hi, guys. Good to see you.
Yes, Washington, D.C. based freelance photojournalist. Anything going on in your life?
Oh, my gosh. So listening to you guys, I went from like the COVID drought to like working like I think we're on day 32 of protests here. And I think I probably have 27 of them. And yesterday I took the day off.
Oh, really?
It was a Sunday. And I was like, I'm taking the day off. And it was really, it was great. So I'm exhausted. But yeah, I went from like the first couple of days, like panting and trying to keep up with these protests and marching.
Yeah.
And then like getting into it and marching like 15 miles a day sometimes.
Yeah.
And then this Saturday when it was like 90 degrees, I'm like now I'm burnt. Like now I'm exhausted. Like I got fit and now I can't. Like I was too tired to march on Saturday.
You would have been perfect to have on for last week's episode. I'm so sad you couldn't make it because we were talking about protest fatigue and covering something for so long. How do you break from? How do you cover a protest differently day after day? Is there a certain way you take that?
Well, I think in a way the protests are different here. So like there has been a variety. So like Saturday was really refreshing. We had a Black Mama. It was called the Black Mamas March. And that was like for kids and mothers. And there was like arts and crafts. And then there was a march and there was dancing and there was yoga. So that was a totally different vibe. And that was refreshing. And then I went to Black Lives Matter Plaza, which they're still forms of protest. They're just taking different forms. So that helps us visually. And it was called the Chocolate City Experience. So people were jump roping and playing chess, and there were musicians out on the street, and So it was a totally different vibe. So I think that helped a lot. But speaking of fatigue, I was feeling really fatigued, but recently I've had a huge increase of followers on my social media, which is like new and exciting for me. So now I feel really invested. Like I want to keep telling them the story. So I don't necessarily have to sign up today, but I'm like, oh, I think I should go out and tell them, which is fatiguing, but I'm like attached to the story. So I'm not, I've got that going. So that helps.
Yeah. And what a crazy, like from the start when you started covering it, when you were out there, and the volatile and crazy aspect of it, from tear gas to bullets to the police to the protesters to the looting to all of that at once, and now you're kind of seeing this progression of how it's changing into something very different and morphing and beautiful. And the images that you have been putting out consistently have been incredible. I just want to put that out. If anyone that's not looking at your stuff right now needs to, because it's really, really wonderful stuff.
Thank you, Travis. And I shot a lot of that with the demo Sonys that I've been trying.
Nice. You liking it? That A9's pretty good, huh?
Yeah, that could get me off on a whole nother topic. So
well, another day.
I'm not sure I'm ready to switch they're awesome, but
we'll talk about cameras later in the episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, when we get to the Nikon discussion.
Yeah.
It's National Camera Day, right?
It is.
That's
yes.
right.
Happy National Camera Day, everybody. What are you guys planning to do to celebrate National Camera Day?
What did you all get your cameras? Did you get a nice cleaning or something? Yeah, what did you do?
I'm letting him take the day off.
I gave it the spa treatment, extra special cleaning.
They're all in the hot tub right now.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it was interesting because I was just looking up what holidays were coming up, because I have to be aware of those for my job, and I was looking at weird holidays, and so there's a holiday for every single day of the year, that somebody made up somewhere, and yep, National Camera Day. So
happy Llama Pizza Day. Yeah,
Llama Pizza Day. Maybe somebody will create the Photo Bill of Rights Awareness Day. Okay, that one didn't go anywhere.
Is that a way of segueing into something?
Yeah.
Usually you're very smooth at this. That one.
Yeah, that was not a good segue. But it is this one right here. So the Photo Bill of Rights. It's this. Again, I've been reading it. I don't know the origins behind it. I know it was kind of developed out of a survey that was taken. And so it's just kind of a way to codify and sort of condense a lot of these sort of responses from, I think, 700 surveys. So this came up as a topic of discussion last week. I wasn't really tracking it. It just came out June 22nd, apparently, according to their website. And so I wanted to read up on it, get myself smart on it. And, I've been learning a little bit about it. It's been signed by a lot of major organizations, NPPA, WPOW, others, WPOW.
Diversity Photo, Everyday Projects, I think it's Juntos, Authority Collective, Color Positive, Women Photograph.
Just to name a few.
Yeah, I think I went through everything in a random order, but yeah, I'm just literally reading it off of the about of Bill of Rights. I don't have that memorized.
Yeah, so basically what it's trying to do is, put a focus on sort of the marginalized communities within the industry, the Black, Indigenous, people of color, working class, folks with disabilities, and really just trying to, and it's not a legally binding document in any way. It's just more of a series of guidelines that deal with health and safety, finance and grievance, abuse and sexual misconduct, and parity, inclusion, and bias. But it's causing a very a lot of angst and discomfort amongst some of the photojournalists in the community because of its intonations or potential to limit what photojournalists can do or can't do. So I'm going to throw it over to one of the signatories, Evelyn Hochstein, because
I didn't sign it. No, I haven't signed it.
Oh, okay, but WPOW signed it, and you're with WPOW.
Yeah, but I'm not on the leadership of WPOW anymore. So I guess being a member, I don't know how that works. Travis could probably speak to that. I am a member of WPOW, but they made a decision to sign on, and I hadn't at that point even read the Bill of Rights.
Really? Wow.
And in fact,
Well,
So,
let me throw it over to you, Zach, first, since
yeah.
you're pretty well in tune with this, and you were the one who brought it up to me. So kind of talk to me a little bit about the origins of this and your experience with it and kind of what you've seen people talking about regarding it.
Yeah, so I mean, my understanding is that basically a bunch of a couple different I guess photo collectives were having this conversation, put out a survey, and then kind of this came about through a relatively longer process than just like the past week or two. Oh my God, it seems like it feels like I've been arguing about this for like a month already. I mean, early on, it's been interesting to watch like kind of the wave, because it's early on, everyone kind of just signed on to it because it's the standard. If you just look at it, it's like, yeah, no, everything looks fine. But it also came out of, I think there's one of the, whether it be the came out of or the worries or whatever, there's been a lot of conversation about it within kind of this new wave of activism, is the talking about some level of consent, and talking about some level of thinking about the people that you're actually photographing, and that they're not just your subjects that you're, again, making money off of their labor and what they're doing and their activism. I mean, it's a two-way road. The fact, and some activists have been kind of speaking out and saying we didn't consent to you taking your photo, even if you were in public, and so on. And some people have also been, not so nice about it, and I guess, sending threats or something like that to a bunch of photographers. I know that photographer friends of mine have gotten some on Instagram and other things. But it is, I think, to me, this is a tiny portion of the full photo bill of rights. And in fact, what most people are arguing about, as far as I can tell, is literally this one little bit in the toolkit, which again is just an advisory language. It'd be like, hey, if you don't know how to talk to somebody and like kind of ask for consent to take their photo, if that's something you're going to do as a photographer, which is always a choice, when you're in public and everything like that, here's some language you can use. And I think the language is a little bit overwrought, because I think you can be like, hey, is it okay if you take your photo? Yeah, okay, cool. And then if they ask, like, sometimes I get people, most of the time, if I'm going to ask to be able to take someone's photo, if I just feel like I need them looking at the camera, sort of thing, I'll just go, hey, can I take your photo? Or even honestly, usually I'll just kind of put up because we're all in masks now and everything. Yeah. I usually just put up my camera and kind of like look at my camera, and usually people are like, okay. I think once I've had no, I don't want it. And then I'm just like, I just move on, because there's 3,000 other photos to take. And it's not an important part of the story if it's something I would ask for consent. But the language has basically caused a portion of the photo community to, in my view, lose their collective minds about it. And because again, it's a voluntary thing. Not only is it voluntary to sign it and to begin with, but even that portion of it, I'm not going to follow that portion of it, and use that language, use that toolkit, not only because I have my own language that I talk to people and my own relationship with activists that I, how I act with them, but also just in general, I think the language is way too much. I mean, like, I think that if people want to know what you're going, because the language is basically like, okay, describe what you're going to do with the photo, what publication you work for, what's your intent, all these things. Only once, I think I've ever, in the past month of covering protests, have I actually had to have that conversation. And it wasn't even it was just, they were curious, because again, there are people who come to protest to take photos. I actually dealt with one of those yesterday. There's a person who came to protest that was part of a white nationalist group, that has been documenting police, I don't know about anti-police, but like Black Lives Matter and like the police protests that have been happening in Albany. So understandably, people are concerned. And so this is kind of, to me, a conversation that we need to be having as a photo community, because there are people out there with professional camera gear, sometimes faking to be members of the media or whatever. And so to me, understandably, activists are very worried about people who are really obsessively trying to take photos of people's faces. And this is something I do when I go to a white nationalist or a Nazi rally. I specifically take photos of people's faces because it is part of my investigative research as well to find out who is actually there, what members of groups. I try to take photos of tattoos and things like that because these are signs. It's not surprising that, potentially either police or members of the far right end up trying to do the same thing and also showing up to protests as not maybe journalists, but as just not, as somebody with a camera, and this happens. And so this to me is something that we need to get ahead of. And I think that the Photo Bill of Rights in a lot of ways speaks to this sort of thing on the way that we talk to our subjects. There's a whole different conversation about what it talks about when, in the workplace and everything like that, which is again is a whole nother conversation. I haven't seen that much argument about that, other than there's one bit, I guess, where like if you have a lot of work, maybe think about other people need work. Don't collect every assignment you need to. I don't know anybody who's doing that. I don't know anybody who has so much work, that they're like collecting all the assignments. I do that all the time though. If I have if I'm working on a Friday, and somebody calls me up, hey, can you do this also on a Friday? I go, I can't do it, but hey, call up my friend Carter. He's in that area, or call up, whoever. Like that to me is just a basic thing that all of my friends do. All of my friends that are photojournalists do this portion of it, and they push assignments. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm actually on the West Coast. Oh, my friend Zach is in the East Coast. You should call him up and try to get him to do the assignment. He'd be a good person. I don't know. That just seems like a nice thing to do. That seems to be something, very cooperative, one might say. But on the other hand, a lot of photojournalists aren't like that. Unfortunately, in my experience, and so they will hoard everything that they can because it's a cutthroat industry. And I think the Photo Bill of Rights in general speaks to turning this industry into something a little bit more friendly, not only for the people that we're photographing, but also for ourselves. My only big argument with it as a total is the lens-based workers. I hate that. That's about it.
It is an odd title.
I get that it's such because again, the labor and livelihood of lens-based workers, including photographers, cinematographers, video and broadcast journalists, visual editors, assistants, and producers. Never mind, half of those people there aren't lens-based workers. Visual editors aren't dealing with lenses, assistants often aren't, and producers aren't necessarily. But whatever. It's the only one that I've had. The few people that I've talked to that helped write the document, they're like, it's been kind of we needed a title that covers everybody, and this is the one we came up with. Which is, other than that, that's it. So.
Yeah, I was looking for the specific thing you'd mentioned about the consent portion, because it's not immediately visible on like the main Bill of Rights portion. Like it seems to be buried under the toolkit here. Am I right, or is that
the exact
so it's
line?
In the toolkit.
The exact line is: informed consent requires a full understanding of where and how media may appear, as well as potential consequences of publication.
Yeah, I categorize that under like a nice to have, if I can somehow provide that information to the subject as I'm talking to them when I'm shooting, great. But, I wouldn't necessarily make that a something that has to be done.
As a person who almost exclusively covers activism, and has for in one way, shape, and form about 20 years now, I don't this sort of conversation that again is a sample dialogue, minimizing harm, applies to fast-paced situations like protests and situations that are rapidly evolving, or situations unbalanced in power for the source of like an immigration case or criminal proceeding. Something that you're supposed to say during. Hi, my name is lens-based worker. I'm an independent photographer working for X. How do you feel? Do you feel safe with me taking a photo at this time? Listen for a confident yes or leave. Here's my business card with my info. Contact me if you have questions later, or if you'd like to follow up. This may be published on social media channels, and there's a possibility the publication licenses it after a fact. Okay, there's no scenario we are having that conversation, and I don't think that anyone thinks that you're actually having that entire thing with a person in a, again, fast-paced situation like protest, whatever. Best case scenario is somebody goes, who do you work for? I say Nerphoto, it's a wire service, it's like AP, it's like Reuters, and you go, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yes or no, and then that's when it happens. That happens, and so yes, during things like I think that you have to be more concerned with things during like DACA protests and things like that, where there are people who are undocumented and are out there. 9 times out of 10, though, or I'd say more than that, 99% of the time, if a undocumented person is out in the street protesting, they are okay with their photo being taken and they're out there. Otherwise, they'll wear a mask. I mean, this is one of the great things that it's even more weird that this hullabaloo has come about this portion right now, is that one of the great things right now is that everyone is wearing a damn mask. And so you can't identify people really easily, no matter what. And so this is a less of a problem right now than, hopefully, fingers crossed, if we ever get out of this, as in our country, in 3 months or in a year or something like that. And so it's weird to me that this has become such a huge problem. But like, as a person, again, who covers specific thing, I cover anti-fascists as well. I mean, people who are genuinely, a lot of times, anti-fascists at white supremacist rallies who are counter-protesting. I know people who have gotten death threats, have had Nazis show up and knock at their door because they have been identified and have been doxxed, not through photojournalism, but just general like social media and other things, because they're white nationalists and Nazis and whatever are doing the same sort of work that a lot of a lot of anti-fascist researchers are doing as well. They're trying to find out who the anti-fascist researchers are and vice versa. And so a lot of times they'll use photos. Very rarely do they actually bother to use photojournalism, because if you're out there, you're already usually known, if you're showing your face and everything like that. But yeah, I just don't understand what the obsession is with this little portion right here that you literally have to like Control F to find in the toolkit, is what everybody for the most part is losing their minds about. And again, it's a voluntary portion of it. It's just a recommended sample dialogue. It's so ridiculous.
Well, I know that Travis, you have some strong feelings about the Bill of Rights you've talked about within APA, so kind of give me your thoughts and sort of opinions on the whole product.
Who, me?
No, the other Travis.
I got to recuperate after absorbing all Zach just said. No, yeah, I'm dealing it from two sides. As an organization that obviously looks at this kind of stuff, and when they ask us to sign on as an organization and as an individual looking at it, I think unfortunately this is a very timely artist Bill of Rights sort of moment. I don't know if it's just a momentary fad. It seems to be something that a conversation we should have always been having, and always looking towards protecting people and doing the right thing. But there's no, other than you signing it, I don't know what becomes of it from there. I mean, it just seems like any organization should have a blanket statement of how we treat things and do things, and that should have already been incorporated into what we do. Just as you're a journalist and there's a code of ethics, it's something that's already been going, and this is good for a conversation and how we change and adapt going further, and it's a conversation we need to keep having. But at the end of the day, if I sign this, nothing changes because I signed it. It's only if I continue to promote the changes, if I hold people accountable. So having this is a good starting point for a conversation. But am I going to sign it? Probably not. I don't think it. If I sign it, it doesn't change me either way. It doesn't. No one's going to go to my site. Oh, well, he's a Bill of Rights signer. I'm going to hire him, or I'm not going to hire him. Or there's no accountability for it. And there's obviously what Zach has brought up. There's some issues in there that none of us are going to abide by. It's just and that toolkit part is the main point of focus. I think most people are having a problem with. So it's we need to have these conversations. We need to do the right thing. But I think, in a month or two, when everyone goes back to work, no one's going to remember this Bill of Rights. And I hope that people are going to remember that the change needed is what we need to do as an industry as a whole, for men, for women, people of color, and even some of the wording. I know, some gay friends that, like, I don't like the word queer in there. That doesn't represent me. I take offense to the word queer. It's like there's certain points in this that everybody wants to put their little line in, or what they're fighting for, what they believe in. So there's a lot of stuff in there right now. Whether it gets refined and pushed, those are different stories. But I think right now, me as a person and me as in an organization, we're fighting for the diversity, and we're fighting to include change and diversity, and be even more conscious of it than ever, and go down that road and implement things that are going to make change, and be very conscious of that. And the Bill of Rights is not going to do that for us, but us doing it every day as a board, as members, as photographers, as a community. That's where it needs to get done.
Yeah, after reading this, I was thinking to myself, this would make something like good for a Bill of Rights that would go for like a union, or like an official organization that could affect change versus, what I think this does is it collects a lot of good ideas in one place, right? A lot of things that we all talk about in disparate forums and amongst ourselves and with our group, saying like, oh man, this, that, and the other thing about this industry I don't like. It kind of collects all of those into one place, which I think is useful. Evelyn, what are your thoughts on this as a product?
Yeah, no, I to your point of it's a great place. It airs a lot of grievances. I felt as an independent photographer on a variety of things, from like, especially about pay, kill fees, or day rates, or things like that. Does it actually empower? Do I feel strengthened by this to then go to my editor and say, I've been working for you for 10 years and I've been getting paid the same day rate, and I deserve to be paid, more, whether it's your across the board day rate, or or all photographers. I mean, there are always going to be like, I just didn't feel empowered by it. I felt like this is a nice group of guidelines. This is something we should all be working on, and certainly we are in all our organizations. And it's not the first time, like a lot of these issues on gender certainly have. I'm part of WPOW, which is Women Photojournalists of Washington. Like, it's about all of this. We've talked about being more inclusive, to also or people identifying as female photographers that are not. Like including trans. I mean, well, of course we would include trans people, but I'm trying to find the right language. I could probably check in the toolkit for this.
There you go.
But does it empower us? And I don't want to take away from the document by saying it doesn't empower us individually, but how do we collectively, and maybe this is a good start, but I try to talk to other freelancers in DC and be like, hey, let's advocate for, we all work for this publication. Let's ask for a raise. But nobody still has the balls to do it. And we're all, and I don't know as far as COVID goes, like how freelancers feel like accepting assignments or turning down assignments, because this is, at the end of the day, this is your bread and butter. You can say, I don't want to do something because it's COVID, but if you're not a staff photographer, and staff photographers are so limited now because newspapers or other media outlets don't have a lot of budget, so majority of people are freelancers. How do you navigate that? You don't have any protections. So these are basic like workers' rights and workers' protections, but obviously broadening. So to include what's going on with racial inequality as well, and gender inequality, all these things. So I think it's a good start. But yeah, how do we really make substantive changes? Is it a union? How do we?
Yeah, and I know this is something that I just started yesterday. I put out there as for APA and reaching out to the community and anybody that worked in the community, especially photographers. I did a Zoom yesterday called Community Consensus, and it was to really just hear everybody and say, just like, you need to be heard and we want to listen. So I put it out there, and a lot of people came in, and it was from all different places in all walks of life, and certainly the topics of the Bill of Rights we did discuss, and I think it was a good stepping stone onto open conversations. But these conversations are happening now, and there's lots of people in the photo community talking about unions and protecting it, which is now, that's unfortunately or fortunately something that protects all these things like you're talking about, Evelyn. It's like, it's like if we have a standardization, but COVID has also been a part of this and the catalyst of it. So when the playing field for months was leveled. everybody went without jobs pretty much. Everything was shut down, and suddenly you have this new frontier of photography and how we re-enter it, and we're the new pioneers, and we get the chance to really kind of rewrite some laws and rewrite some stuff going in, and how we re-enter the whole frame of photography as a working artist. And there's an important thing there where we now need to be responsible and figure out how to we enter back in. Do we go through OSHA training and become certified, dealing with COVID and diseases? How do we walk onto sets as journalists or studio photographers or, event photographers? There's a whole world now that we have to address. And because we're adding on even more stuff to learning and being certified or safe walking onto sets, does that mean the rates should go down? No, they should not go down. So there's a whole issue of things here, and so as a community we need to pull together now more than ever, because obviously our voices are stronger in mass than they will ever be as a solo artist, and it's more important now to really kind of reach out to everyone and come up with those plans.
Evelyn, I was wondering, obviously you said you're not a signatory yet, or maybe you won't be ever, I don't know, but you said, of course I asked you that because WPAO is, as an organization, signed on to this, and I'm curious, did any of the organizational leaders talk to any of its members to say, hey, this is what we're planning to do? Do you guys have any say on this? Or they just decided unilaterally?
I honestly don't know how the behind the scenes happened. I just saw on the Facebook, but I've been honestly a little bit out of the loop because I've been working every single day covering the protests in DC and a couple other things. But so I haven't been involved. I'm not in the leadership, but that's I'm curious about that because I just as a member got this announcement, we as WPAO have signed on to the Bill of Rights. So I'd be curious. I will follow up on that.
Yeah, no, I mean
the NPPA didn't send anything out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's why you see people canceling their memberships to the NPPA because they don't agree with the verbiage.
And it's funny because I'm rereading again the NPPA Code of Ethics, which is supposedly what all supposed NPPA members have signed, and the Bill of Rights just seems to be kind of an expansion, a larger explanation in more detail to things like Code of Ethics number 4, treat all subjects with respect and dignity, which is, I can tell you, something that a lot of photojournalists don't do. Give special consideration to vulnerable subjects and compassion to victims of crime or tragedy. Again, really, they do not. Intrude on private moments of grief only when the public has an overriding and justifiable need to see. Again, holy crap, no, they don't. I mean, this is one of the most distinct memories of Charlottesville that I have. Was a bunch of people who had literally just been run over by a car screaming at photojournalists to give them space and to let medics through. And the photojournalists were in the way of medics getting through to get people help because they needed to take that photo. I took the same photo with a telephoto lens and got the same photo, and it has been published multiple times. And this is one of the big problems that I've seen, where it's just people have taken that idea of, if you're not close enough, if your photo's not good enough, you're not close enough. And I get that it has a different meaning than physical space, but I feel like a lot of people have taken that meaning to be you have to get 3 inches from somebody's face with a 35 millimeter lens to get that right portrait. I got the same portrait with a telephoto. I get that the bokeh is different in the depth of field or whatever, but you know what? It sells the same story. And if it's something that, if it's at a memorial scene when somebody's crying, I still get the tears. I still get the emotion of the moment. I don't have to physically be in someone's face, which again is changing, which is again, when you physically get in this space of it, ideally a visual journalist should, number 5, strive to be unobtrusive and humble in dealing with subjects. And also number 6, respect the integrity of the photographic moment. And so I don't understand what people could have possibly signed on to the NPPA and then have these massive problems and such outrageous issues with this. At the same time, when almost every photojournalist who's working in the industry today also has to take commercial jobs, which is also, by the way, defeating a lot of the guidelines of the NPPA as well. That if you take a commercial job working for a sports team, you probably shouldn't cover sports then. Or if you work for, you can't be a journalist and cover that same industry if you just took a job working for that industry. So it's, I mean, and I see that all the time. Like somebody works for, takes a job working for an oil company or something like that, and then also sells their photos or works on a story, a journalistic story, either using the same photos or using the access that they can get. I mean, this wild thing that no one, the industry is so screwed up, and they're losing their minds about this, which is trying to do something good, even if you slightly disagree and if you completely disagree with it, then that's a whole different subject. Because I don't think you should be working in journalism personally, but
yeah, getting back to your point about sort of the glom, right? The groups of people swarming a subject. It's not the 35 millimeter they're using; it's the 16 millimeter they're using, and getting as close as possible to get the raw feeling and emotion on the subject and whatnot. And I can speak to a little bit of this in my past experience working as a paparazzi in New York City. When you're dealing with a singular, highly sought-after subject, such as a celebrity, and you've got an overabundance of people all trying to capture that one person, it becomes an arms race. Because when there was only a few people out there doing the job, they would have their 300 millimeter, and they would be shooting, giving the celebrity space and respecting their, whatever distance, I guess. Respecting that space to a degree, but then you'd have someone new show up in town, another agency or whatnot, or more people, and they would come in and they would just kind of swoop in and jump in out of a car and capture it and leave, or they would get closer, and it became closer and closer and closer and closer, and it was just again this sort of arms race. And it reminded me of that photo, that was a very famous photo from the Haitian earthquake, where you just had dozens of photojournalists out there capturing like somebody who was crushed or like buried underneath or the rubble of a building, and you see the photograph, and it's like a dozen people all crowding over each other trying to get the shot, and this poor person, I guess trying to survive. But I mean, it's a dark side of the business for sure. And
Code of Ethics number 9: do not intentionally sabotage the efforts of other journalists. Right. Number 10: do not engage in harassing behavior of colleagues, subordinates, or subjects, and maintain the highest of standards of behavior. I mean, the idea that anybody who has worked in New York City, whether as paparazzi or just covering protests and stuff like that, the idea that number 9, intentionally sabotage, doesn't happen all the time. I personally have been on the wrong end of that about quite a few times by very well-respected photojournalists who work for wire services. Yeah. I mean,
they jump in front of your camera or
No, I mean, they either shove or put, the elbow does a lot of work. I mean, the worst people across the planet, I'm sorry, are the TV in New York City. Again, the TV journalists, the local TV guys who will purposely set up their tripod in front of you. And just take their time, and if you dare to, it's just wild to me, because it's like this set of guidelines, that code of ethics, which is actually something that people get outraged about if something happens. People will lose their mind if somebody manipulated by staged photo opportunities. I mean, give me a break.
Well, it certainly on that in New York City with it's not, I wouldn't say it's intentional sabotage. It's this, they've kind of curated this whole basically it comes down to who has the most viewership, and the people that respect them the most, whether you're online, you know that they'll put the piece of paper down for CBS over some wire service. So they've been kind of groomed to know, well, we have access more than you because we have a wider viewership. So I mean, we've cultivated that, and we haven't let we don't give the spots to the to the young and fledgling people.
Well, no,
so it's been cultivated in a way.
The examples in my history, and I've talked to a lot of photojournalists, especially in New York, is whether you're on a stage or whatever, and you'll be sitting in a spot, obviously as a photojournalist, a still photographer primarily, not taking up as much space as a TV journalist does, and they'll just set up their big sticks right in front of you and won't give a damn. I mean, but because they're trained that they can get away with it, because what are you going to do? Take on, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to argue, get into a fight?
And that's the thing. that the house will come over and say, nope, let the studio, because it's TV and stay there. So you can't fight it. But if you've been in it long enough, you can, you usually know those people, and you can, like, do you mind if I sit in between your sticks? I'll make sure that nobody bumps you. And if you have those relationships, that's where that's where it goes. And I've certainly shot enough fashion shows and stuff like that I have had that exact experience. And you get to know these people, and they're the same people, and they're like, no, I got you, man, here. And it's like, oh, I'll watch your sticks while you walk away. There's always ways to do it.
I've literally had them move my sticks, local TV. So, like, I have absolutely zero respect for local TV in New York City, like, at all, personally, especially as a still photographer.
There is a way to finesse it. So I know that from personal experience.
Yeah, no, I've seen the competition in all different types. It's not just paparazzi, and it's like going to a model shoot, or like runway shoot. I shot Fashion Week, and it was the same thing.
It's a full-on scrum.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's literally people get in line to get their spot.
It was brutal.
Yeah,
it's brutal.
Red carpets are
red
the
carpets.
Worst
Yep, same exact
I've
thing.
I've ever had as an experience as a photographer.
It just makes you feel dirty. It makes you feel dirty because everybody's shouting for that one picture, and everybody's fighting for it. It's just it's horrible. It's a horrible experience.
Leo over here, Leo.
Exactly.
Angela.
The way that
trying to get that one split second of eye contact so they can sell their book.
The way that male and female photographers cover red carpets and deal with female actresses is the most vile thing, I think, in our entire industry. If I wouldn't include anyone who does that professionally in our industry, honestly, because there's no ethics whatsoever involved in it. And but
Evelyn, are you out there? You've been covering the protests every day. Are you competing a lot with other photographers, photojournalists, or are you kind of able to find your own space?
Yeah. I think you're able to find your own space, but now that you mention it, this is crazy. The night the statue a Confederate statue was toppled in D.C., and I was there. There weren't that many journalists there because it happened late at night. It was a surprise. But the local news, Channel 4, NBC network was there. And literally, this is news happening. So you're trying to document. And Zach was just reading the Code of Ethics, like, be unobtrusive. I don't remember the exact words. Yeah. The guy from the local news, when everybody's trying to photograph, and the protesters are stomping on the statue and setting it on fire, literally turns around and does his stand-up on live news, millimeters with his face next to the toppled statue. So then even take the photos or document the history. And I'm like, and I was like torn. I wanted to step into I couldn't because there was a statue there, but at least get in the frame because he was on live news. And I was saying, you are not the history. Like and here he's doing a stand-up saying, here we are documenting history, local news. I've been here for 20 blah, blah, blah days of coverage in Washington, D.C. And it's like, yes, that's true. Let your cameraman get the actual scenes and do your stand-up a few feet off camera. Yeah. But really, he interfered with history completely. And that was like probably the most frustrating event I've had in my entire time. Another wire photographer, like, I don't even know who he was, came up to me recently and was like, you're in the way of all my shots, or you're watching with that wide angle lens or something. And I was like, there was like no one there. Like, we were at like the Lincoln Memorial and we're both trying to like photograph this one guy. Like, and I'm like, really, dude? Like, I don't know if that was insecurity or he was just pissed, or it was totally bizarre. But so you get it a little bit. But and I almost never shoot with my like 16 to 35. I think I had literally just put it on my camera for this one. But I didn't even know what he was talking about. So you get it. And there is, I think it was because we were at a press con, like not a press conference, but some ministers came and they wanted to organize something. So of course, all the photographers, like with the sticks, are trying to find a spot. And in the end, it wasn't even a good photo. And I remember wandering off. So I don't know at what point I somehow. But anyway, back to the TV thing. I mean, that is BS. Like, you got to step back a little bit. You've got to let history unfold and shoot it. And a lot of times I'm shooting and I've got other people's cameras in the way. It happens. But this was really egregious, in my opinion. But
I've actually thoroughly enjoyed seeing the live shot, like, because, if I'm at a protest or I'm sitting at home watching cable news, wishing I was at covering something, because I live far enough away that it's an event for me to get there. But I have been thoroughly enjoying watching people finally shushing people doing their live shots during like moments of silence and things like that. Like, I'm finally thankful as a person who's like trying to videotape it and does, my DSLR, if I'm recording something, I don't have a boom mic. I don't have, I'm not going to lapel mic somebody that's talking, that's, running around and with a megaphone or something like that. And then you have the person next to you doing a live shot, completely ignoring the scene. Again, basically creating a moment that is, again, not photojournalism, not anything, just so they can get their live hit with it in the background and the right. It's just, that was actually MSNBC. Like, I've seen those are almost the worst when it comes to like at big events and that sort of thing. Like, I've literally heard in the middle, I have Donald, and then suddenly somebody decides to do a live hit standing right next to me, and if I'm not hooked into the board trying to videotape, I just lost everything the person said for the next 5 minutes while they do a live hit. I mean, it's just obviously gone off
the
way.
24-hour news cycle has done a lot of damage to journalism.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is the problem is that, like, like, obviously, most of the conversation I've been hearing is still mostly photojournalists, but we all work that line. We're all lens-based workers now. Damn it.
You bring that up I wanted to go back to that lens-based workers thing, and that part of the reason for that is a lot of organizations' bylaws only covered one or the other, whether it be video or photography. So we had to come up with a name that kind of covered under this one umbrella, and it's hard to come up with one name that covers one like entity of creatives. So that's something we had to fight too. So lens-based really covers all people that are in this kind of creative field, whether it's video or so it's an important term right now.
Yeah, I just I feel like there has to be I literally agree with it. It's just like, God, we have to do something better, because I've always had this huge problem that NPPA, like 2 years ago, if you look at their magazines, you look at things, it's the National Press Photographers Association, and I've always despised the idea that, as a person who works in both fields, that videographers and photographers are two different things. And the fact that, like, the primary focus, it seemed like, if you just looked at the magazines,
but nowadays a lot of us are shooting both. You're shooting
exactly,
both.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, like, it stopped meaning anything, I mean, which, again, like, try looking for jobs though. That's
now, like, when they're named photographers, they still have to cover the video people. So now that you say lens based, it still covers both. So it's very important.
Yeah, but now we have to include the astronomers and the optometrists and the bird watchers. They're all going to be looped in there as well.
Dentists need to be in there too, I think.
I mean, it's funny when you think about it. It's like astronomers actually probably the most journalistically integrity behind it.
They asked for consent.
Like, how else are they going to manipulate the scene?
Oh no, he dragged his shutter and the comet looked longer tail. I've seen it, man. It's terrible.
Hey, what gender is that planet?
Comet dragging is a big problem in the industry.
Oh, I bet if there's any astronomers that are listening to this, please, there has to be this entire, like, it's funny because, like, obviously we're a photojournal, we focus mostly on visual journalism, and so, like, we had to focusing on that, but, like, every little industry has it. Like, I work on election and voter integrity journalism, and we have our own little, like, I hate the way that we use this language, or this person does this and blurs the lines on this sort of thing, and it's always funny that every single community has their own little nitpicking, and it's all of whatever. But at the end of the day, like, one hopes that we at least follow the basic guidelines in these things. The problem is that a lot of people don't.
Yeah, no, I think the Photo Bill of Rights is interesting. It will definitely spur more debate going forward, but I don't think it's a set in stone at all. I think it's a living document, and I think, if you have complaints about it, bring it up to the people. It's just people making it for other people. So I mean, it's, again, like you said, it's always optional. So will you sign it? Let us know in the comments what you thought about the Photo Bill of Rights. Will you sign it? Will you not sign it? Do you like what they're saying? I need to have Noah Berger on here and have him rail on it.
You have Youngie Kim on it and talk about that. I just won't be on that episode because I don't want it to get into a completely. I've already noped out of a group.
That's the episode I want to watch.
Yeah, man, that's it. The grudge match.
I'm all about burning bridges within the industry, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
But there's a little level of, like, torching them while people are on them is my current feeling about certain things, because I mean, a lot of people have taken it, like, way too far, and like, we're being like, oh, this turns us into activists, and it's like, well, you know what? Like, as a person who covers activism exclusively, pretty much, and like, you know what, like the idea that again is all freelancers, and something I've said a bunch of times, like all freelancers to some level, we are activists because we cover the things that we care about. Otherwise, you know, it takes a lot for us to get out the door as freelance photojournalists. Like for me, I don't cover something unless I'm interested in it, because I also write about it too, and I also need to know about the subject and spend time with it. And I think one of the problems is that the way our freelance marketplace has turned into, the way that like wire photography has turned into its own industry, thanks to, I mean, wire services like Nerphoto that I work for, or that I upload photos to, is the fact that we shoot photography for things that are going to sell, as opposed to for what's important and what is journalistically, telling, and so again, like one of the things I think that the Photo Bill of Rights and a lot of the conversations that I think that we need to be having is that we need to start thinking about what is actually journalism, as opposed to what is the photo that's going to sell on the front page of the newspaper. If you cover a 10-hour long protest, and at the end of the protest, somebody breaks windows of a Starbucks, what photo, every photojournalist knows that that's the photo that's going to be on the front page of the paper. Protest turns violent, and that's it. And even though that's not true, you have 10 hours of a protest and one jerk throws a brick through a window or does something, that does not define the story. And that is not good journalism. And I see every single photojournalist, including myself, doing it every single day, uploading those photos that don't tell the story, and the photo editors using those photos for covering a peaceful protest up until one jerk throws something through a window or does something. And that's the photo that's used, because that's the thing that gets people to click on photos. That's the photo that when it feeds through, and shows the little thing on Twitter or on Facebook, that's the photo that's going to get people to look at it.
So
as
whose responsibility is it to make that decision? Like as a photographer, you say, I'm not going to send it
I have actually stopped. I know that I've stopped sending those photos. I'll do it in my own story within the context of the story, but I've stopped sending those photos, and I know it's been to great loss financially for me, because I refuse to have my photos used in that way. That is lying. Also, the bigger problem too, and I think we talked about this in the last episode, is the problem is the illustrative photo. I'm to the point where, like, even though I make money on it, it's the way I can kind of keep working, is that my photos from Charlottesville, the Tiki Torch March and that sort of thing, those have become, anytime you talk about the far right, that photo's used. The Tiki Torch March, where it's like shot through the crowd and it's, whatever, and those photos are used. And it doesn't illustrate what they're talking about 9 times out of 10, but it's a super easy for lazy photo editors, or now it's not even photo editors, but for, people who are looking for photos within Getty and just pulling a photo. That's the easiest thing to pull up. And like, I make a nickel or 15 cents every time that photo's used. But it's, I'm at the point where I'm like, if I could pull that photo, I probably would, because I'm just tired of it being used in that way, because it's not good journalism. And, and one of the problems is that we stopped having photo editors. We have, art editors at best. And the problem is that you're working for a newspaper. You're not working for an artist magazine or something like that. We're not looking for illustrative. We have a photographer at every single news story that's ever been covered for the last 15 years. Somebody has probably taken a visual picture, whether it be with their cell phone, whether it be with a DSLR or a video camera, that you can use that image in there to show what the story is, to illustrate it in a journalistic way. But we stopped doing that because it's easier and it's cheaper to pull a photo from a wire service than actually hire a photographer or buy the photo or whatever. And it's a problem that, it comes down to all of us, I think. I can't stop a photo editor at Newsweek 3 years later using a photo incorrectly. Otherwise, I would just never upload any journalism to anything, and we'd have this problem.
It's hard to police all of that, but it just happened where I had taken a photo of a peaceful protest. So a guy was being arrested by the police, but the photo was used to illustrate a story about looting. This person was not arrested for looting, and I called. I sent an email to the Post. They immediately changed it. Now, I'm not saying you can police everything, but mistakes happen. But that information embedded in the caption, that was like a poor news judgment. whoever decided to, post that with that story. So I don't think that's our fault for uploading now. And to your same point, I was just at a demonstration at the Lincoln statue in DC, and there was Jack Posobiec, who's like a alt-right Pizzagate neo-Nazi, I guess some people would consider it, or he is. He was there. I missed it. I was working with another photographer from the Post, so I was filing. She was out covering, and I knew she got it. And she actually had a photo of African Americans in the crowd pulling him out to safety. But if you just looked at that photo without any context, it would look like these African Americans were actually maybe attacked. And she said she sent it, and then she called and said, do not put that out, because if it goes to Getty and goes to the wires and is used out of context.
Yeah, Daily Caller, all the far right public.
That photo.
Yeah.
So it didn't get used. And that is a case where we have to worry about that. But in general, I don't want to like self-censor. Like, even if there's only one looter, there are one thing's happening, like you said, it is part of the story. So maybe it's a bigger responsibility for editors to not work, to actually think about what they're using to illustrate. It should be part of the record, the historic record.
Yeah, and I think look, I uploaded to my portfolio site, where I don't use a portfolio site the way most people do. I have like 400 photo sets, so you literally go through the everything like possible. Like my Charlottesville set is like, I think 500 photos now. So I mean, mind you, is a 12-hour long thing, but it's the fact that like I think that, again, like whether the Photo Bill of Rights or something like that, where the problem is as a photojournalist, as kind of just a mentality, we're isolated, we're our own people upon ourselves. We're not even like, I mean, like I hang out with reporters, print reporters all the time, and they talk amongst each other, they share stories, and they, because they share like, oh, that person got that quote, I'm going to pull that quote from that person, give them credit and do the whole thing. A good reporter should do that. So there's like more of a collective. I mean, hell, they have tons of unions like print reporters do. We don't have anything like that. And so we have no way to kind of come together and talk about, okay, here's how I wish that our industry acted as a whole. And so like, things like that, where, like, how do we as individual reporters, can we call, like, yes, we could take that and call up the editor or email or whatever. I mean, I don't know who to call up at Newsweek's, website or whatever, to call up and be like, hey, by the way, that, and my photos have never been used wrong. It's just, I'm tired of them being used in such a ridiculous illustrative way that it's been this wide sense of idea, this like just anything on the far right, stamp that photo on there, even though there'll be people listed in there that have faces that you can put their face on there. If Jack Posobiec is at an event, you put a photo of Jack Posobiec up there, but that he's the person that's the story, if he's part of the story. But if he's not, then, don't use it as just a general like white nationalist thing. Because again, I mean, like you have something like that. I mean, like used out of context, if the protester is in a story who's getting arrested just for doing a peaceful protest, and it's a story about looting, that's a libel. that's to me, if I was that protester, I'd be like calling up a lawyer right away, because you're not a public figure, and and everything like that. And it's just, to me, it's just like, okay, is that the way that we talk about it? Is that that we get newspapers worried that they might get sued, because I don't know how to get publications to give a damn about visual journalism in any way, shape, and form, unless we either not unionize, but organize in some way, shape, and form, whether it be through a Bill of Rights or whether it be through actual like paying dues of some membership organization. But because like 99% of the photojournalists out there, we're just all uploading to websites and barely ever. I mean, I just emailed for the first time in 3 years with an editor at my wire service, and so it's like we have no contact through, and that person doesn't have any contact through with an editor at Newsweek, or I'm just picking on Newsweek for some reason, that goes to nerphoto.com, logs in, and then looks at a photo and does it or whatever. Or the thing is too, it's like whether it be Zuma or whether it be Nur or whatever else, they feed through 7 other wire services. Most of my photos are bought through Getty and not even bought through Nur. And so it's, I don't know how you got a photo 9 times out of 10 these days. And
well,
I don't know. It's just,
What it sounds like to me, what you guys are saying is that really, if you want to have the most control over where your stuff is used, is you have to be your own agent, essentially. You have to control your imagery and make those kind of deals and arrangements with the publications. And similar to how, this Bill of Rights has a script that they suggest you mention with the person you're photographing. It's almost like a script you would have with the person wanting to use your photo. It'd be like, what is your publication? How do you plan to use this photo? Do you know how you're using it? Which, in a perfect world would be nice, but I think realistically, you don't have time to do that. You can't be your own agent.
Well,
Evelyn,
also,
you're working.
if you want to get paid, you have to make choices. Do I want to actually sell my photography or be the difficult photographer that they're like, no, I'm not going to deal with them. So I mean, it's just not a practicality.
You can do that if it's like I can do that with a lot of my Charlottesville work because I'm the person that has those photos and that's it. There's one other, maybe one other photographer.
Exactly.
And you can do that with occasional stories, but can I do that with fast breaking news?
Yeah.
Can I upload it to my portfolio and hope to God, even if I don't have a photo shelter account, I can't afford the $72,000 a year that it costs. Photo Shelter, if you want to give me a sponsor. But it's a joke. It's not that expensive. But Zenfolio is about a tenth the amount.
If you're at APA, get discounts. So hey.
Well, there's discounts through NPPA as well, but it's still 10%. So it's $40 off of a $500 a year membership, which I'm sure is worth it. But it's but it's like a lot of things. But like Photo Shelter, I know has like a better feed, and more for photo editors are looking in that world than say Zenfolio or other sites. But even then, the chances are that anyone's looking at anything other than Getty right after a breaking news event is ridiculous. I mean, that's where everybody's looking, and so that's where the conversation is being had. And if I want to do, unfortunately, we don't have long thought out news anymore. We just have the breaking news story, and then maybe 6 months later we have, here's the correction of what actually happened that day.
Well, then maybe the solution is that we have a new agency that advocates for the correct use of imagery by the people who buy the imagery. You know what I'm saying? So something that advocates for and looks at those, sort of chasing down, Evelyn, chasing down those different sites that actually use your work and make sure they're using it correctly. But anyways, I would say if you're out there and if you can get consent, great. If not, I wouldn't tell you to stop doing what you're doing. Capture what you can of anything of event you're doing, and then in terms of what you decide to publish, obviously shoot everything you see, and then make that decision in terms of what you feel comfortable with pushing out there. But document everything. All right, let's talk about the Nikon D6 really quickly. Obviously, this is Nikon's new flagship camera, taken over for the D5. This article here on Petapixel talked about some of the neat features that are part of the camera. It has USB-C, GPS. You can save different types of JPEG quality to different cards. You got your time lapse, your interval time shooting, focus shift shooting, which I'm not really clear on what that is. I am. All right, talk about it. Talk about it, Travis, and talk about any of these features that you like.
Well, I mean, I'm not the Nikon shooter. Zach is, so I will down to him. Obviously, they make a good camera. This is one of their professional series. It's going to be another tank kind of beast. Is it an evolutionary jump up? No, it's not. Is it going to be good for people? Yeah. Is it going to justify jumping from the previous model to this one? Maybe not. I don't think the sensor's anything that different on it. Is it going to be a good camera? Yeah, probably. But in terms of all the exciting stuff, I'm a lot more excited about the Canon R5 that's coming out than this.
Yeah.
I think that one seems like it's got a lot more going on in terms of an evolutionary step than the Nikon. But it's certainly it's going to be a fine camera. But am I hyped about it? Am I excited? Am I going I got to get that in my hands to test shoot it?
Yeah.
No.
Now, there is some interesting stuff here I've never seen on any camera, like a Kensington anti-theft lock. That's a new one, but it makes sense. A lot of these cameras are kind of pre-staged, like the Olympics and whatnot. I like... So
the focus shift, it usually allows you to take much higher resolution photos by you have to be you're not going to hold the handheld this, but and you don't want to use it outside where there's wind or anything like that. But what it does is it literally moves the sensor so you can get these higher megapixel photos, and it kind of puts them together, stitches them together.
Yeah. Well, as our resident Nikon shooter, Zach, what are your thoughts on the D6? I know you're rocking the Z cameras, but
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be, which is, I mean, I think something, it takes a lot of the Z6, Z7 kind of tech and puts it into a DSLR that is built to, you know, put nails in the walls, and like heavier water, you know, just like weather built. I mean, this is what the the D5, D4, or whatever series it's good. I don't know what the price point is, probably $6K, which is usually what they start out as. Having 2 card slots is really nice, as a even though I am already sick and tired of the C, whatever they're called, the QXD cards, because they're
executing
incredibly expensive. Oh my God.
Yeah.
They're so expensive. Like I have one right now, it's 120 gigs, which is enough for covering most things, but it's problematic when you're covering like waves of things and you're like, okay, I have to move everything off. You can't leave anything ever on that card. And not having 2 cards is painful. Something I hope that in the next Z series they fix. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, it's, you know, it's meant for, you know, something that most people need. I don't know what it adds that the D5 has outside of some, you know, fun little things, like very slight upgrades. The Kensington lock thing is curious. I mean, I guess it makes sense, you know, at large sporting events, as they explained in the article here, Metapixel, like large sporting events, you leaving your gear and maybe like while you're working or something like that, people can't switch out.
Yeah.
But it seems like one of those.
You can't lock down the lens, can you?
That's right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's,
so yeah, your body's
like,
there and your lens is gone, and
yeah. I mean,
No.
yeah, especially at those. On the other hand, I don't know. I think it's made more for like a mess up thing, like people accidentally grab the wrong. Everyone has the same gear, you know, especially at big sporting events at this point. Like there's 3 cameras that, and you know, the only difference on the other hand, at like, you know, some big event like that is, I don't know who's accidentally walking away with like a D6 and the 500 millimeter f4 lens that they're carrying around, like, you know. So I mean, it's whatever. I mean, I guess it's one of those cool things where it's just like it doesn't take up, you know, like just add it, you know. Like I've never once used that. Every computer I've had ever has that thing, and I've never used it once. And so I'd be more worried about accidentally grabbing the camera and then ripping the table away because I forgot that it was locked. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, cool.
I'm gonna use this as a camera strap. Just use the lock.
I think more. Yeah, that actually be useful. I have had problems with my camera straps lately, but I think that what would be interesting is that whether or not this is one of the last DSLR camera, like full body big cameras that Nikon puts out.
Maybe.
So that's just one thing that the upgrade. Yeah,
I think a more interesting topic is Olympus.
Yeah.
Going bye-bye.
Yeah. I thought about bringing them up here on the show, but we did talk about them a few weeks ago. Specifically, their exit from the South Korean market. Was that a sign of things to come? And it turns out it was a sign of things to come. So yeah, bye-bye Olympus. So, I mean, we'll be saying bye-bye Nikon here. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll just be Canon and Panasonic. And Sony will go out of business. And oh, wait, no. Yeah, that'll never happen.
So Sony has too many other things. Although they did break off the camera division into its own division, so that's something very, very different.
Yeah, and speaking of Sonys, how has your experience been with the Sony A9, Evelyn?
Ooh, it's been great. There are some things that I really like. It's a totally different experience. I mean, I'm used to DSLR, and I'm now shooting mirrorless, and I really don't see the same. I mean, it's just like looking at a TV screen, and I don't know how long it get used to that. But it's a different feel, or maybe it's my eyes, but I feel like I don't exactly know. I'm just not, my brain is not processing things the same way. However,
it takes some getting used to, yeah.
In low light, it's awesome. It's really good quality. It's super fast. I love the silent shutter. It's not as hardy as the 5Ds. I mean, I'm not even shooting with like the hardier Canon. You know, I'm not that technical. I don't even know like the model names, but But like I lost the eye cap on one. Like I don't know how well they stand up to just general day-to-day like photojournalism. I was really worried what was going to happen if it started to rain on me with these cameras. But in general, I'm loving the focus tracking is awesome. They're great. I'm just not sure. Like I haven't felt like, oh yeah, I want to make the leap. So to mirror, I mean, it's not, maybe it will be the new Canon or the Sony, but I think I'd like to have one for certain shoots, but would I use it all the time? I'm not sure yet, but they're awesome. And I got like, I mean, I've been shooting really well with them. I don't think it's the cameras per se, but I've done some really nice work. So they're pretty good. The A9 II is definitely better than the A9. I will say that. The grip, it's the it's just like I don't think I would get the A9, the first iteration. The exposure compensation lock, although I don't like that. I like to be able to adjust that myself, and I don't like that button with the lock, but the one that is unlocked moves around quite a bit. So yeah, there are things, they don't quite have the professional not professional. I wouldn't say they're built necessarily for the photojournalist working in like a riot, such, you know, a really fast-paced environment. Are they great for shooting like politics inside, where I've time? Yeah, they're pretty awesome. So
they are a little stronger than you may think they are. I mean, I've had friends that have brought them to Africa and just gone through waterfalls and rhinos and all kinds of stuff like that, and dirt and dust. With mirrorless, you always have to be careful with the dust hitting the sensor and not changing lenses on the fly in certain situations, just because it will hit the mirror. But they're starting. But now the A9 II locks down its shutter when you change lenses. So just like the Canon, so you know it does avoid some of that.
Yeah, maybe I've just been, they feel maybe like I haven't wanted to.
It's a different feel. It's a totally different feel. And the A9 II, they took that into into note and changed the feel of the camera and the overall feel of it. But in terms of focus and that tracking, the A9, I've never used something as fast as that in terms of like it's focusing before my brain is.
Yeah, the joystick's a little smaller too. There are just a couple things, but I mean, it is great. It just, I think the hand feel, but I like the size of it. The A9 II hand feels better in the hand, but it doesn't feel quite as good as my.
No, I hear you. I feel it.
Yeah. So you're not fully sold yet on switching. You're still kind of ticking the tires, right?
You know, I'm still kicking the tires. I mean, I'm sold in the sense that I feel like this would be a really useful tool, at least to have like one body. There are times when I need my camera to be silent, and I've felt it to be really effective. But is silence the reason to switch to mirror? I mean, there are other factors to switch to mirrorless. The speed has been really good too. I'm going that way. I think I'm going to have to just wait though until the new Canon comes out, and then I'll have to do a comparison.
Worth checking,
But I would say
the eye autofocus on the Sony it's insane. Have you tried that?
Yeah,
it tracks people like nobody's business.
Yeah. I hear the dual pixel autofocus on Canon is pretty good too.
It is, especially when working video and stuff like that. I prefer working on sometimes a Canon with video, but you get more options with the Sony in terms of raw and picture profiles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know how the Canon R5 works when I get it, because I think I'm going to switch.
What about the R6?
Well, the R6 doesn't shoot 8K video, so I don't care.
You're going up. You're going all the way.
Okay, sweet 8K. I want to
all the resolution
around the lens in 8K.
All I can say is I'm shooting on my Z6. I'm shooting exclusively 4K now, because mainly because I can take stills with it, which is the best thing about the mirrorless. Which is why honestly I really, never mind my my 750 is I think finally on its way out. Like there's been some weird shutter, like it's one of those I probably could get it fixed for like $500-600, but the camera's worth $500-600 now used. And so it's like one of those, I'm like, do I just finally get another Z6 or Z7 or whatever else is maybe coming down the line? But been able to pull basically screenshots from the frames, which I've been using continually, and I can just keep it on video, which is what I'm shooting more and more. The biggest problem is though shooting 4K not only blows through the battery like nobody's business on like all of these cameras, but also just like I literally just said screw it. Finally, I bought 2 more 4 terabyte hard drives because it's like it used to be, I mean, DSLR video is really, really compressed. I love the way it looks and everything like that, but it's really compressed. But this 4K video is obviously much more expansive. And so it's just that's been a new thing, especially with only one memory card. It's kind of problematic too. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, once I get the R5 and I'm shooting 8K video, I don't even know if I'll even shoot photos anymore. Honestly, it's just too easy to pull stills.
Well, you can take. I assume the Canon. I'm looking at the thing. It has the same thing. Usually take stills while you're recording video. You can set the shutter, which is what I do because.
Are you going to actually do that? I mean, it's like if you're actually shooting to use the video, that just are you that smooth in pressing a trigger that you're not going to affect your video by pressing a shutter?
That's a good point.
And get a jostle.
I mean, on the there's no it doesn't really do anything. I mean, like I
just
shoot everything.
Just the action of doing this.
Yeah. No, because you're holding it. If you're holding it underneath, I mean, like I've been doing it long enough that like I already. No, but I'm just saying I've been doing it long enough while doing this that I'm like.
Well, we're going to test you. We're going to test your video, KK.
I mean, mind you, most of my video is during a protest, and I'm like one-handing it over this. So if you can notice the slight 1 degree change, if you can do that, then that's more on you. But
Yeah, sure. Just don't ever zoom in, and you're fine.
Yeah.
All right.
But on the Sony, I'm sure it has 74 axis, stabilization or something. So, right?
At least IBIS.
It does have good stabilization. I think. What is it? Panasonic has some of the best.
Yeah,
Olympus had really good too. Yeah.
Seriously, you can handhold the Panasonic, and it's like you're on a gimbal. It's pretty awesome. All right. Well, let's wrap up the show with our last topic really quick. I know this was a very strong topic for you, Zach. Basically,
Zach's got a whole impression on TikTok.
All right. But the Mashable case again, with regard to, excuse me here, Stephanie Sinclair. She filed a suit against Mashable for using her work without her permission. Basically, Mashable was like, well, it's on Instagram, we can embed it. And she was like, no, you can't do that without my permission. Instagram's like, actually, we don't provide sub-licenses, so this has now reopened the case. Zach, you had some strong feelings about this back when it first happened. You were done with Instagram. Has this sort of changed your mind about Instagram or anything? Are you more confident in it as a platform?
So I actually just said screw it, and I eventually went private.
Okay.
On my thing, so now people can't do that. And I feel like because I kind of changed the idea. It was just like just leave it. This is like my feel now with anything. With like if you're going to boycott something, especially if you're going to boycott something you weren't using already. I mean, like lefties have been boycotting Walmart for years, and Walmart never gave a damn because they didn't lose any business, and so if you're going to stop using it altogether, I don't think that they're going to care. And so like I just went private, and just means that I'm at events or whatever, and they have to somebody literally just goes, oh, what's your Instagram? If I take a photo of them, and then they just ask, I give them the name and then do an invite, and it's done. And so I've actually seen it weirdly. I've seen this like growth in people following me as opposed to keeping it public, because then people could just see my photos without actually following me. And so I'm torn on whether I want to change it, even if they do, because I was stuck at like 800 followers because I don't really use Instagram that much for a long time. Also, photojournalism on Instagram doesn't really ever play that well. But I've gained like 100 followers since I went private.
There you go.
And so it's actually worked really well. So I may keep it that way. But if they do change the change the like to be able to opt in or opt out on embedding it, then I'll go public. I'll go public again and probably use it. I don't know if I'll use it more. The platform doesn't. I get like 50 likes on something is the most I've ever gotten. So like it is what
Evelyn, you've gone back and forth between making your account private and unprivate, right? Does this lawsuit potentially give you hope that maybe your imagery is more protected? And you're muted, Evelyn.
You're muted, Evelyn.
Here, I'm back. Sorry about that. Noisy in the household. So I'm torn. I briefly went private and now I'm public again, and it's been amazing. And I'm getting like, my following has increased by like 900 people.
Wow.
And I'm getting thousands of likes now, and people are really following me during what's going on, covering the protests. So I want that to be public. But at the same time, I'm getting a lot of reposting and people are using my images. I'm not pursuing, like, I haven't really looked to see if it's like copyright infringement, but I'm also on assignment for the Washington Post. So I'm sort of, even though I still own the copyright, I do worry that, my images are probably going to be grabbed and used in ways that would violate my copyright. I don't know if it would be exclusively by someone like Mashable, but I'm torn. I do think it's a great platform for sharing. It's a great way for people to see what's happening. It's great. As a photojournalist, I feel like I'm, connecting with the audience and able to share more photos that are even like running, in a news outlet. But I do feel at risk, I guess. So to your point, I do feel like vulnerable to copyright infringement, but I guess that's the case with anything you put on the internet, right?
Well, it's like the philosophy of Instagram is to share your imagery, right? So it's like almost counterintuitive to not want to share it, but in the sense with this particular case, if there you don't want your stuff shared and people are sharing it against your will, that's kind of violation of your, I don't know, your rights, obviously your copyrights.
Right. I guess it's like, well, Mashable is like another news outlet that A, offered her like a measly $50 and B, then basically stole her image or used her image, and they're arguing that they had the right to do it, and obviously it's it's still being litigated, but that's really low. I mean, that's extremely low. And I've certainly gotten requests from news outlets, especially TV news outlets, they'll see something I've posted and they'll send me a direct message on Twitter, Instagram, and say, can we use this photo for credit? And I just outright, flat out shame them. I'm like, CBS News just asked me for my photo for free. I share those and I get really irritated when stuff like that happens. But I don't know yet if anybody is, used my images in ways. We'll see. I mean, we can keep you posted. But
what would you ask for of Mashable if they wanted to use your photo for this? What would be the appropriate price?
Wow, that's a really good question. I mean, I try to never. I know it's small usage and it was embedded with in an article, but maybe like a minimum of $100. I mean, it's not a lot, but what you have to set up. But look, I know my photos, and Zach mentioned this too. If my photos are in Getty and it's for web reusage on Mashable, the going rate might be $25 or $15. I don't even know what I might be getting a royalty check. So maybe that's an overestimate. But it's just not really even worth $50 to me, it's not really worth my time. Or
better than nothing. I guess.
I don't know. That's good.
Ever actually getting money from Mashable too is that they're one of the more problematic. Even if you do get a contract, even if you do go through the whole process, actually ever getting paid from them is I've read many stories about actually getting a check from them is different.
I've never told them, but how do you price something like that? Because I know if somebody comes to you directly, I'm going to ask for a higher price. But if they're getting my image from Getty, I have no control over what that price might be.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the problems, with my wire service, I'm pretty sure the way it works, I still haven't been able to figure out exactly, is that you can get, and I think many other, Nerf Photo is just one of them, Zoom is another, and there's a ton of small ones that have, maybe half professional photojournalists or not even actual photojournalists, uploading photos to them. But is that I'm pretty sure that they have some sort of subscription, and then you end up getting a smaller amount, because I'm I know that some of my photos have sold for $2. And it's part of I think sold is I think that they've been used through a subscription plan or something like that, and that's my portion of whatever I get and whatever, and I get 50% of that. So I've tons of photos are 50 cents, $1, and that sort of thing, and it's more of a bulk point than not, and also just in general, I know otherwise my photos won't be out there as much, and but I'd rather get a quarterly check than nothing at all and no one ever use any of my work. But I Mashable or something like that. I think I actually sold one photo to them once after Charlottesville, and I think it was 150, 250 or something, and that was mainly based on I think that I saw that was their kind of going rate at which they would potentially do it. There used to be a Tumblr that like who pays photographers that you could kind of go off of. Unfortunately, it looks like we talked about in the last episode that like it's no longer it's no longer any use for the last like 2 years or so. So I really wish that like NPPA or somebody, again, is like adding things onto these organizations, but I really wish an actual organization would kind of take these things on. I donate to it any day of the week to like have some idea of, being able to, again, because it's not even about undercharging them and you not getting all the money. It's like a mask. It's about other people too. It's like so that's like the next person who charges, thing is they go, oh, well, Zach just charged us $150 for that photo. There's no way we're taking, $300 from you. And so like, I think there has to be some level of like, collective conversation that we're having. That's another problem with the, come back to the Bill of Rights again and everything else, is the fact that we don't talk amongst ourselves enough about day rates and things like that. And that's how they end up screwing us so much, is that they use that privacy against. I mean, I have a handful of photographers that we kind of, they won't say how much they got paid, but if you say, hey, I think I'm thinking about charging them this much, they'll say you can go higher, or you might be too high, they won't pay that, or go for it. Which is more often than not. I don't know. They've never paid me. Why don't you just give it a try? Which is, more often than not, sadly, the thing. But
Travis, you're an advocate for social media and Instagram. Does this case in the machinations and developments of it change your opinion of Instagram at all, or the way you use it?
I think you really have to look at Instagram as a whole. There are millions and millions and millions of users, from the very best of photographers to the amateur. And if you look at the total caseload of anything they really have done nothing nefarious to anyone ever, really. I mean, there haven't been too many cases in the grand picture of things. When you're talking millions of pictures a day, millions of pictures over years, billions of, there really hasn't been a real oh, they just outright sold my photo and they're making money off it. This just hasn't really happened. Has other people taken stuff and stuff like that? Yes. So in the grand scheme of things, less than 1%, maybe, probably. Zach, you seem to think otherwise, maybe?
Well, the problem is that it's by Instagram, Facebook, these sites don't do anything. They're not nefarious in stealing work or something. Well, Facebook was or still probably is, for stealing people's photos and using them in ads and that sort of thing. But Instagram, the problem is that, Instagram, by the choice of not having these opt-out, opt-ins, end up screwing over people. And basically saying, the problem is that photojournalists as a whole, people who care about people who don't have, like, look at, if I had,
but the point is sort of, and before we go down out of what I was going to go to, is that they can take your picture off of anywhere. If you put up your on the news channel or the paper where it goes to, I can take a picture of it. I can screen capture it. It's too easy. So it's not Instagram doing it, really. It's just the other person kind of doing it.
But the difference is, though, that Instagram is, by not including language or not including an opt-in, opt-out, is allowing people to legally take it. The difference is, if you screenshot something from the Washington Post and put it up on your site, you're copyright infringement. Boom, it's done. That's not a question. I've had about a dozen different lawsuits over the years that, doing that. But Instagram can take a photo, embed it, use the embed, and obviously that's my choice.
But Instagram's not doing that, though.
Instagram is allowing it to happen, though. That's the difference, and that's what the argument is. I'm not saying Instagram should be sued.
They provide the ability to, and the platform to enable it.
They provide.
Absolutely. And there's a certain amount of, just like people that complain about using Facebook. It's a free program. You don't have to use it. You don't have to use it. It's up to you.
Post everything on your personal website.
Exactly. So my point is, it's getting out of it what you want to get out of it. I personally get a lot out of Instagram, and if someone feels that it's not a cost benefit, or they're losing out, they don't need to be there. So I mean, it's like the whole argument is like, you don't need to be there.
Evelyn's going to have to jump off here in a second. Evelyn, is there anything you would like to let people know before you sign off? Things people need to check out or just look forward to in the future from you?
Oh gosh, this is always my heart. I'm just out there. working, covering the protests. I'll be at Black Lives Matter Plaza. So
When are you going back out to shoot more protests? Are you going back out tomorrow?
I'll probably check it out later today,
Okay.
and I don't know specifically today what's going on, but I think I just can do a daily stop by, so I'll be out there later.
All right. Well,
Is the defund the police still there?
They
painted
the street, yes.
Oh, I'm actually genuinely surprised they haven't removed that, but that's very good because I was there when they did it.
Yeah.
And I photographed the whole thing happening, and so I was just like, oh man, this is gonna last one day. The police are not gonna let this stand, and it's kind of amazing.
Well, stay safe.
Yeah.
Be safe out there, Evelyn, and make sure to have your consent script at the ready at all times. Be like, hello. Person, I am Evelyn Hochstein. I would like to take your photograph for many purposes. Are you okay with that? Is that okay with? So.
Yeah.
All right.
I know it's a funny I got hassled the other night I was photographing a mom and her daughter, and it was a very tender moment, and I was really grateful for the silent mirrorless camera. Yeah. And I didn't think I was intruding, and I was pretty far. I was definitely not up in their faces. It was emotional, and two guys came in front of my camera.
Oh my God.
And we're like, no, don't take their photo, or make sure. I just sort of I felt like this has the potential to be, let me just kind
it's
of.
It's never the people you're photographing. That's the thing that I've always found. The few people that have had problems with it, it's always two, usually white guys, come by and you basically are being heroes for people who didn't have a problem with it. Yeah. Anyway,
I felt wow, they were being a little bit paternalistic towards this woman who
exactly,
and her daughter. And when they left, and I said I worked for the Washington Post, I identified myself, and they're like, we don't know you work for the Washington, whatever. I just sort of ignored them, and they left. They didn't push it. I think they probably thought they got it. And then I went up to the mother and told her who I was. She gave me her name. I talked to her daughter as a teenager. They followed me on Instagram. They've liked my photographs. And, so you get that a lot. And it's right, like you said, Zach, it's not always the people. It did make me think, okay, to others, it looked like this mom and this daughter, had tears in their eyes, and they were, having this moment. And maybe we can be intrusive. I get it. But some people get what we're doing and get the power of it, and other people don't. And you have to sort of balance that and weigh it. And I had gotten the shot, but it did piss me off. To be honest. And I did want the opportunity to speak to the people directly and not have a stranger who was acting as an intermediary thinking the right thing. And I also didn't like that they were speaking for this woman. So anyway, we can end on that note. But, these are the things that we face in our jobs, and you kind of have, it's going to happen, and you just balance them, and it's just part of being out there in the world. There's a lot of conflict out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, Evelyn, well, be safe, and see you next week, hopefully.
See you next week. Yeah, good to see you guys.
Bye.
Sorry, I have to. Okay, bye.
But I'm hopeful with this, the case and the way it goes, that it does change some of the aspects of Instagram. I would love to be able to turn off or on my embedding capability. I'm really surprised that Instagram doesn't already allow that for the individual user. That seems odd to me.
No, I obviously I agree, and these are important things in protecting your work and trying to do that. We're making choices, but when you're looking at companies like I did kind of bring up TikTok earlier. TikTok is actually they've been discovered of spying on millions and millions of iPhone users. The code is actually snooping software right now, and the person that went in to actually look at the code found the code changed itself as he was looking at it. And that's how scary it is.
That's
that is
crazy.
Getting stuff off of, so when you talk about a program like TikTok, where millions of teens, millions of people are all using this, and it's getting their information, it's having access to their phone, and actually specifically looking for stuff. It makes Instagram look like very clean cut and kind of nice, but my feeling on Instagram is I'm not putting pictures up there that it's they're not going to probably going to steal them and sell them. If they do, I can fight that. If they're not high quality, they're going there. I get a lot of social media and response back and jobs out of it. So it's really kind of what you want to put in and what you're willing to sacrifice. And granted, we all want the best things and protections, but Instagram and the whole big picture of things, I don't think it's the worst demon out there. And I don't. It's not something that I'm going to task on at the moment.
it's a very specific. I think the problem and the whatever it is a very specific thing for photojournalists in my mind. I've talked to a bunch of photojournalists who are like strictly photojournalists, and almost no one has gotten a job out of Instagram because photo editors aren't looking there.
True.
And so it's one of those. It's like it's a site that like. It's one of those like the only people that I know of are like family and kind of extended family that like are like this is the only way that we used to be able to see your photos because Twitter, especially like Twitter, it's just you can't see anything.
It's not a good.
It's not good for that. I'm posting 10,000 tweets a day, so that's a problem. And Facebook does have that's the thing though is Instagram is owned by Facebook, which does have all of these options. So it's not like the company that owns Instagram doesn't have the option to do it, and you could build your own. The problem is that it doesn't have the entire kind of atmosphere of being able to sell ads and do anything. And I think that maybe is the thing that is holding off. Also, it's also like it's a site that was bought, in my view, by Facebook and then kind of forgotten about and not dealt with because it's like it's a self-perpetuating thing. It'll do what it does because like the big problem is they took so long before they started dealing with the sponsored ads and stuff like that, and even that I've had a photo pulled that they viewed as a sponsored ad because it was a book. I think I took a photo of a book that my boss was releasing or something like that, and they viewed it as a sponsored ad, but it was like
I've actually shot those kind of book photos and never had anything pulled once.
It's just
so I don't know. They're coming after you, brother.
It's just weird. I know, but it was. I'm trying to remember what it was. It's just weird that they have this kind of like, oh well, it's a missed opportunity that we could have made money off of you, basically. And so it's like this, like I don't know what the hell the issue is, but. It just seems like such a simple fix. Again, it's a line of code that could be changed in 10 seconds to add an opt-in, opt-out. And I don't even want it one or the other on the site because there's certain photos that I'm like, I don't care. It's a photo I want that get out there. And so if you embed it, I barely ever, people embed stuff from my Twitter all the time, but not from Instagram. But again, it's like I have 10,000 followers on Twitter and 987 or something or whatever on there.
The only reason I can think that they haven't done it yet is that perhaps the essence of what Instagram is to be a platform for sharing. Like it goes counterintuitive to what their sort of mission statement was, which was to create essentially a way for you to take photos with your camera phone because it wasn't meant initially for like, you uploading your external photos.
But it doesn't have a share option though. Like if it did, like I can't go on Instagram's site and share. I would love to be able to legally share someone else's photo to my feed or something and be like, hey, look at this awesome photo. But I have to use a separate app to retweet it basically or whatever it, which I hate because a lot of people do that.
It's actually a repost app.
Yeah, and so like it is by its nature a lockdown thing, and the fact that like the options are of like you have no ability to decide on who sees your work, and so it's like you have millions of people or thousands of people, especially like young. Like my sister, she has like 3,000 followers or something like that but she has her account on private because thankfully she has it on private because she's a teenage girl and that's creepy. But it's just like that sort of thing. Like it's weird that it's a photo sharing thing, but like. And try share it to Twitter, share it to Facebook or whatever. Yeah, you have the option when you post it that can share both the whatever. But like, it doesn't share the photo. It doesn't share the visual image of it if you share it on Twitter, if you share it on other platforms. And I mean, like, I barely have anyone ever like embed photos from Instagram on anything, and I don't barely ever see that anyway. If people are embedding something, it's usually on Twitter. Obviously, again, I work in the news world. It could be very different within art and fashion and that sort of thing. That people are doing that differently, but. It just seems weird to me that it's not there's not all these other options that Facebook's own other platform has, and so it's not like it's some weird ethical thing or something over. And to me, it seems like it limits the ability that if they really wanted to make it, they'd have like sharing options. Because I would be perfectly fine. I worked on a time lapse video for freaking like 8 hours a couple weeks or when I was in Richmond. And somebody just downloaded it because there's download apps, and downloaded it and then re-uploaded it to their thing and then tagged me on it. And like, because I guess that's something, because it's the only way that you can share something on Instagram is you literally have to steal the image, download it, and then re-upload it to your site. And it just seems like such a ridiculous process that it's like, if you had some sort of feed, you have a feed exists within Instagram. And if I could just share it and have a way of doing that, then that'd be great. But, you know, God forbid we even have like the ability to upload photos from the internet or upload photos from our computer as opposed to our phone. That would be really nice too.
We'll definitely track the story and see how it changes over time. I'm sure there'll be updates soon. Travis, what do you got for us before you sign off here?
I'm really gonna throw anything out there this week. I've been obviously very busy, and I know. It's just I've been so overwhelmed working the last couple of weeks that I'm just gonna I'm not gonna plug anything, but say obviously there's a lot of discussion to be had here. We just on the Bill of Rights alone, we were able to talk almost a full episode on that. So I think obviously just the four of us talk so much that. You guys must have opinions, and we want to hear from you too. So please reach out to us, and we want to keep this continuing. And we have tons of different social medias that Dave will break down and ways to follow us and reach out to us. And it's important to hear from you because your opinions matter as much, and we want to hear what you have to say as well.
Little known fact, if you made it this far in the show, you're required by law to comment on the show and the topic. I don't make the rules. I just enforce the laws. I'm just saying.
And hopefully we can, Zach will return because he was a little quiet this time and didn't have much
Zach,
to say.
I mean,
so
really,
next time he'll come
I had to
a little
make
more
up.
prepared.
I had to make up. So
speak up next time, brother. Zach, anything going on?
I know you have opinions.
Zach, anything going on in your world we need to know about before we sign off?
There's very few. There's very few things that get me passionate. So you want 30 minutes on why Instagram should change their code? I give you 45 minutes. Anyway, I got some things coming up. I'm working on a book of my last month's work. I think what I'm actually not a book. What I think I'm actually going to do, and I also would like comments on whether people think this is a good idea. Is that what I think I'm going to start doing? Is every quarter put out a magazine of my work. Because I also write news stories and that sort of thing, and try to see if the first time I'm going to do it is going to be for a fundraiser for voting rights, journalism, i.e. the nonprofit I work for, Ballast Investigative Fund, and also Black Lives Matter related groups. But from then on, it's going to be something that hopefully helps my work and kind of funds it. And so because I produce so much work that doesn't get anywhere, maybe it's some small story somewhere, maybe it's just a wire thing, but one photo gets out and then you never see all the other work, and I'm like, might as well do something with it. So putting out an individual magazine as kind of like a promo, but also as a hopefully maybe somebody subscribes to it, because you can do on Blurb. They're super easy to put together if you know basic design, and they're cost are $5 a person. So hopefully if I'm charge $10-11 or something like that, which is surprisingly how much magazines cost these days.
The ones that are left.
I just remember I bought GQ, or I was looking at that. I subscribed to a couple different things, and it's what the cover price is $9 for a magazine. What?
Well, what's amazing is you get all these monthly specials, and you can get it for a year for $7.
Well, that's the reason I subscribed to GQ, because I don't know why it's $5. What the? At least whatever. Hopefully they're making money off it.
For $7.99. I'm in.
yeah, or one for $9. But yeah. But anyway, so I'm gonna try to do that, and hopefully that'll be out in a couple weeks. Because I actually have a graphic designer doing it.
All right,
so
great. Well, we look forward to seeing that on one of our many social media platforms, which you can find out more about at aroundthelens.com. You can go to our Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page, YouTube channel, all that fun stuff. And of course, if you'd like to support the show financially, please go to patreon.com/aroundthelens for a little $1 a month. You get everything we do ahead of time. You can go on there and see my unpublished commentary track on what I think about consent and, blurring of photos and faces and stuff. We will end this week's show. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Travis, so much for making this an awesome experience all around. Truly appreciate it. I've been your host, David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 231, and we are out of here.
Thanks for listening to Around the Lens. We hope you enjoyed the show. To continue the conversation, head on over to one of our social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. To support the show financially, consider donating to us via Patreon. For show notes from this week's episode and links to everything else we talked about, just go to our website, aroundthelens.com. Finally, if you or someone you know might be a good guest for the show, get in touch with us via email at info@aroundthelens.com.